Hello everyone, this is Fanos again from 2050 Materials, and in this video I'm going to show you how to use our projects tool. Now, you will not have access to this projects tool initially if you have just registered on the platform, but you can reach out to us to get a test access or a subscription that will allow you to use it at scale. Now, for this projects tool, the idea is that you put together a bill of materials, either for an entire project, so for example for a building, or for something like an assembly, so what you see here. Now, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create a new project, and I'm going to be working just on an assembly. So first of all, I'll upload a photo of a ceiling assembly I have. I will say ceiling example. I'll set the sector that this is based for. And then I'm going to say London as a generic location. And instead of the gross internal area, I'm going to just say 1 meter squared, since I'm going to work on 1 meter squared of a ceiling assembly. So I'm going to leave floors and total height empty, and then I'm going to click save. Now what you see this does is it creates the project here. And if I click on it, I can get into the tool. Now here you can do a bunch of different things. You can add more information. You can click on edit and add a description, for example, which will help your colleagues understand what this assembly is. But what is really interesting to start doing is to go into the selection of materials. Now, if I click on data sources, this drop-down pops up, or this drop-down comes up where I see different data sources of generic materials. So when we say generic materials, we generally mean material data which is not linked to manufacturers but represents an average of certain data points. So for this example, I'm just going to put the 2050 materials generated database, and I'm going to start adding my project components. Now, as I said, I'm just working on a ceiling assembly, so I'm just going to say ceiling finishes. And here I'm going to start selecting things like an acoustic board. I can add more rows. I can say I'm going to select the type of coating, and then I'm going to also select tile, for example. So under acoustic boards, I have several selections of, for example, gypsum boards, recycled plastic boards, wood wool boards, etc. I'm going to just pick the wood wool boards for now. I'll pick some coating that's acrylic, and then I'll pick also some porcelain tiles. Now, when I've selected my layers or materials, I will click on Save Configuration, and that will ask me to provide a name. So here I'm going to say Ceiling Configuration 1. I can always create more configurations as I go through this process. Now, once I've done that, I will click on the second tab, which is called Configurations Table, and that will show me all of the materials that I've just selected. And this is the view where I'll start being able to add quantities. Now, for this example, as I said earlier, I'm just working on 1 meter squared of a ceiling assembly. So since all of my units are in meters squared here, I'm just adding units of 1, and I will save the configuration. You already see an example of the amount of embodied carbon emissions in life cycle stages A1 to A3 here, which you can then use to understand at an early stage which components might be the most impactful. Now, already just within this kind of 2-minute demo, I'm able to generate a dashboard that tells me what the total footprint is of my ceiling assembly, how much it is per meter squared of the assembly, and then a few other things like the total biogenic carbon within this, the amount of fresh water that is consumed during the manufacturing of products, etc. Now, in this dashboard, you can also see things like the top materials that contribute to that. So you see that in our case, the porcelain tiles add most of the impact. And then you can also scroll all the way down to see how the carbon footprint is distributed in terms of the stages of life cycle assessment. So this tool, just to be fully clear, it does not just cover A1 to A3 emissions, so it does not cover just the manufacturing emissions related to materials. It also calculates the transportation emissions, the installation emissions, as well as the end-of-life emissions. Now, what is interesting about this tool is that I can very quickly, as I've shown, generate one of these dashboards. But what I probably want to do if I'm at a slightly later stage of my project is not to indicate generic materials like the ones I have indicated here, but really to go into the 2050 materials library and find a specific product with an environmental product declaration, ideally, that I want to use as the product I'm replacing my generic selections with. So to do that, I go under one of the product type categories like building boards, and I'm going to click on the search product button. Now, if you've seen the previous video about selecting materials, you'll see that there's an easy way to filter through all of these products. So I do encourage you to go see that video. In this specific example, I'm just going to pick the first product that I find here just to show how we add it to the project. So on the product page, you'll see this button that says Add to Project here. Now, by clicking this button, that will already pre-fill all of these drop-downs where you're able to understand how, or you're able to see whether in the bill of materials this will land. And knowing that about 1 meter squared of this board is about 3 kilograms, I'm going to add 3 kilograms of that material. Now, if I go back to my project and I go to the configurations table, or otherwise known often as a bill of materials, what you'll see here is that I see the building boards generic material here with the embodied carbon data of the generic library, as well as a specific product that I've specified. Now, the interesting thing about all of this is that in my dashboard, I can either look at my results just based on materials, so again, non-manufacturer specific, or I can say, when there is a product, essentially use the product data first, so deprioritize the generic data, and when there's not, then revert back to the data. And as you've seen from the numbers, there's a huge difference in this case on how the footprint, on the total footprint of the assembly. The rest of the dashboard is similar. You also see here that since we've added the product-specific information, specifically one that comes from Sweden, and my project is in the UK, the transportation emissions are higher than earlier. Now, going back to the overall projects tool, as I said earlier, this is a very flexible tool, so it's been used a lot to generate assemblies, as the example I've shown you here, but it has also the ability to be used on an entire project, so a building or a single housing, for example, has the ability to be used in fit-out projects, as well as anything else you can imagine. So you can even take custom furniture and input the raw material parameters to calculate or to estimate the footprint. I hope this was helpful. Thank you very much, and please check out our other videos as well.